Yeah, okay.
We are live.
Yeah, it is 6 o'clock.
Garrett's not here.
Okay,
Years ago.
yeah. Is Peter there?
It's hard,
Yeah.
not yet,
Not yet.
But,
Are you going
but
to?
they're coming in fast.
Okay,
So we can scrambling,
Right.
I'm going to write that.
There's Mr. Garrett. Here's Mr. George Benson.
Which we decided not.
Hey Garrett, thumbs up.
It's
Here.
actually-
It's
I watched this
Nice to see you.
5. Same house now.
I just.
Hey, George.
Mine's just-
And they like to.
My wife was on there. All right.
I think it's good.
Are you ready,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen? Yes. It's 6 o'clock on our phone, but not by the clock in the building. All commissioners are present. And for staff, we have Chad and Angelina and Garrett, and you said Peter's there someplace.
Peter will be here. He's not
Peter
here.
will be there. Okay, awesome. Okay, we have. This is the funny way to do it. You did it differently. We usually have a consent agenda to accept the, oh, there it says. Excuse me, guys. I'm learning to read. Consent agenda. We have the minutes from February 8th, financial report from February 24th, and we have no correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
John has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Russ is second. Thank you. All those in favor say yes. Oh, excuse me. You
Just-
had a-
Some discussion.
Yes, on.
Page 1 of the minutes, Watts Pope is Watts spoke.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Oh. Yes, we do not want him.
good, aye.
We do not want him. Okay. All right. With the one letter correction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, moving on. Reports from the staff. Chad, do you have anything to report to us today?
No, other than we've been, well, I guess, yes, we have a few things. Code enforcement wise, we've got a few cases going on. Most of them are being opened and closed without going to court, and so getting resolved happily, so that's excellent. It looks like we're gonna be doing another town hall, with the mayor and the city council on the 25th. Just double check that. Yes, the 25th on Monday will be another fire station town hall, and the city council is still working on what exactly that's going to be, but they're gonna pose some more questions to the public about that situation in the fire hall. We're putting some signs around the parks, as you see, just to take care of the recreational immunity issue in Gerhart or in Oregon. Just, you know, so saying to people that these are recreational trails for fun, not for falling. So that will take care of that. So that's good. And we can keep our trails open. It seems like we've been very busy in the planning department lately. We've got some plans coming in, which is just part of it, but spring is sprung, so there's a lot of little issues, and people are starting to get ready to build and have some ideas about what they want to do with their property. So they've been contacting the planning commission or the planning department, and we've been working through that. Regional Housing Task Force meeting, we've been attending those and going to those meetings, discussing items. Right now, Peter Watts is really working on the population estimates that are coming out of PSU. We have had these population estimates happen to us over the years, and it's been accurate when Gerhart was, you know, going through her growth stages 20 years ago. But they kept the population estimates for growth very low, and we've been receiving a lot of people in town. So Peter is working with them to make sure that they're paying attention to that, because that has to do with state dollars for revenue sharing. That has to do with urban growth boundary expansions or not. That has to do with infrastructure spending. So we're working hard to try to get into what they're assuming for the coast area and have them reconsider some things so that they look at our situation a little bit differently than they would look at the rest of Oregon. Because even though we've seen a population drop in Oregon, of course, around here we haven't. And it continues to see people to be moving into town. We're working on water rights in the city as well. So we have collected lots of information over the last 12 years of operating our system. We have chosen now to be the time that we go towards Water Resources Division to apply for more water rights for the city so that we can provide water through the summer as well. Otherwise, we have to buy Warrenton. We've kind of gone full circle there. Warrenton at first really didn't want us to have our own water system. Now Warrenton really wants us to get off of their water entirely because they have a lot of housing and some large projects that they're looking at that they're going to need water for. So I think that's good for the conversation, and we'll let you know more as we know. That's all that I've got for right now.
Okay, thank you. Garrett, do you have anything that you would like to report to us?
The only material thing I think is that the Drift Haven Inn zoning text amendment that you all recommended approval of was approved by City Council without a whole lot of discussion and without any additional testimony from the public. Yeah, as Peter said, we've been doing a lot of customer service with prospective applicants, even though you're not seeing a lot coming across the Planning Commission's desk in terms of development applications. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Peter Watts, do you have anything to report? There.
Yeah, let me unmute. I think let me turn on my video now. All right.
There you are.
There you guys are. So we got our Portland State University population projections couple weeks ago, and we're all kind of taking a look at those. Those are really important because it determines how we get our how much we get of the state's shared revenues. So that's gas tax, liquor tax, cannabis tax, and then in something like ARPA funds, those are also given to cities based on the Portland state population estimate. So we've been working with them a little bit so that they understood what's been going on here. They actually have projected our population less than it was over the past decade, but as a percentage more than any other city in Clatsop County. So Garrett and I are going to be continuing to kind of look at those and perhaps have a couple of conversations with Portland State to better understand their methodology and how kind of they got to where they got. Those numbers would also help determine whether a UGB expansion would be necessary, and that's something that the state looks at kind of countywide. So they're the Gearhart numbers, and there's kind of our buildable land inventory, but then they also look at kind of countywide the different cities. So we'll wait. The numbers will be final in May, June, that timeline. Then the other thing is that there's some housing bills that likely are going to be potentially come into play for us once those are signed by the governor. And I haven't checked on the status of those bills since last week, so that could have already happened, and that may impact our ability to do a modest UGB expansion if we need it, or potentially a land swap based on that would be done on a more expedited basis than a normal UGB expansion would. So I have to wait for those to get enrolled, and then we'll take a look, and next meeting I can likely inform you of the impacts of those and what we could do. And again, those don't mean that we will do anything, but it gives us a potential tool in case we need it. And there is it seems like a critical housing shortage on the Northern Oregon coast. I'm continuing to hear that people are unable to find housing, particularly workforce housing. So we'll kind of see as those related issues, the population estimates, as well as what the legislature allows us to do with housing, as those kind of unfold.
Okay, thank you. For clarification for me, you said they're projecting the population for Gearhart will decrease from what was previous, as will other.
Right. So you guys might remember that their projection from 10 to 20 was, for our population growth, was around 6%. And I had felt very strongly that they were underestimating the population growth just based on what I was seeing and hearing. When the US Census actually came out, ours was around 25% population growth. And that's not just new housing, it's also that the people who are so in 2010, 45% of the houses in Gearhart were the primary residents of the people that owned them. And in 2020, it was up to 50%. So we've seen folks that are choosing maybe once what was their vacation home is now their primary residence, and also building of new homes. So I had been concerned at what I was hearing as far as what Portland State thought our population growth would be over the next decade. It seemed artificially low. So we had been in touch with them so that they had our more updated numbers. And so they projected our growth higher than how it was projected in November, but it's still about half of what the actual growth was from 10 to 20. So I'm pushing back on that. I politely am pushing back. Hopefully Garrett would say I was polite during the meeting, but pushing back nonetheless, because again, this determines how much of the state shared funds we get, as well as what land use tools we may be able to use if there's a need. And the other jurisdictions in the county, I'm not sure that they have been tracking this issue as closely as we have. And so their numbers are also, in my opinion, quite low. So we're going to see if there's kind of interest countywide in having more of those conversations to alleviate some of the housing shortage that is happening right now.
Okay.
So it's been a work in progress.
All right, thank you.
Jenny, I have a question. Is Portland State like the state of Oregon's designee to determine this?
Yes, they're
yeah.
statutorily the one that that's required to be used.
We've had reports before from PSG on previous years, so it's been an ongoing thing, so, okay. Angelina, did you have anything to report?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Do you want me to leave the trees and permitting process on the goals list?
We're not to goals yet. Yeah.
That's the only.
Okay, we'll get there in a minute, okay? Why don't we talk about that, okay? Commissioners, do you have any reports to make?
I have moments.
Yes, Paulina.
I was, just FYI, I was appointed to the budget committee by the council, so if you have any ideas or suggestions that particularly planning department would need, you could send me an email or something. And also, I was going through some papers of mine. I was on the planning commission in 2008, And planning commission sent some proposed zone changes for the trees. Pretty much the same thing we've been working on. It involved a permitting process and a few other items. And none of them were accepted by the council and none of them were implemented. So we still have the pre-2008 when we worked on it. So I do have a copy of that and
That's interesting.
I'll just hold on that.
Okay, excellent. I have made a note to myself to make sure that everyone fills out their SEI report. Those will become available tomorrow. If you have not done it before, then you have to go on and create your account, which is very simple. You've got 1 month to do it. It's due by April 15th, and if you don't do it, you get a nice little fine, which is not worth it because it takes 5-10 minutes to probably do. And all they're trying to do is make sure that you're not getting a benefit from serving on the planning commission.
Financial benefit, because we all benefit.
Well, yes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be financial, it could be dinners out all the time. See, but, so it's pretty straightforward. I generally, same as last year. I think they changed a little bit this year, but it's not complicated. So planning commission, city councilors, city manager and city lawyer could fill those out.
So just to clarify, we haven't gotten those yet.
You should have received some notification, but if not, be looking for it. I get a whole pile of stuff from them all the time. It opens tomorrow and they'll tell you the portal that it's supposed to go to, but you should get something. If you don't get anything, then please talk to Mr. Sweet.
Okay. What would the email address be that they'd be sending?
Oh, well, state of Oregon, something, yeah.
It did come up a couple days ago.
Well, I get something from about every other day. But
I get so many emails on, so if I got one and deleted it by mistake,
But that
that's
was
quite
that
possible.
was just a notice.
No, yeah, there
I
was
saw
not.
that, I saw that comment.
Okay, you got a notice, but I went and looked at the handbook of that the other day, and it just said, I believe it opens tomorrow, so you don't have to done your income tax yet, doesn't ask how much money, or anything, just ask your sources. So it's pretty easy. All right, goals list, so Angela has presented a question about trees. And we have it on our goals list someplace here, which line is it?
It's under the.
Oh, okay, under that 2, down towards, well, just about the middle of the page, tree permitting process. I think we thought we were done.
We didn't think we were done.
Not every town's to hold it.
I would just leave it there until we have it
Done.
done. That work for everyone? Okay. Other questions about the goals list?
Well, one, I
Wait, Russ?
bring up was down at staff, picking on the staff, I'm sorry. We have the evaluate and implementing systems development charges. Now that's been on there for years. And we're giving money away when we don't do it, and I'm just wondering why we have it, or when we're done it more specific.
I'm not sure. So that is something that is starting to percolate more and more.
Okay.
And it also has to do with a lot of the other little projects that we're talking about. So I talked with the mayor, I think about a week ago about that, and he wants to start getting started with it. We've got 2 other major projects, fire station and the water rights that we're working on right now, and then that will tie into that as well. So it should be pretty soon. It is on the council's desire to get done.
Well, it just seems to me like if we are into a building season where every dollar we don't collect is $1.
Yeah, it's
Anyway, that's just me.
Good point, good point.
gotcha.
Belina, that's something.
Yeah, this is more kind of a question of how you would get something on the list, and specifically, this is, to me, it's like an emergency preparedness thing. I grew up on Vashon Island, and the house I grew up on looks a lot like the houses around here. It had a widow's walk out of one of the upstairs bedrooms. And to me, it seems like in an earthquake, potential tsunami situation, being able to get out there so close to your roof or on your roof would be a really good thing. So I was just wondering about that. It sounds to be kind of cool if you had a big view.
So are you proposing to build a roof here or?
No, but there are places in town where people might put a widow's walk in and it would give you another 20 or 30 feet of height.
Okay, so to get, I think your initial question was, you wondered how you could get your goals on it. Was that your question? Was that your
Well, like,
initial?
yeah, is that something that would, I mean,
If
I
it's something that you're
understand it's
interested in, then we are always open to it.
I mean, I don't know if it's something you could do already, I don't see them around town. Or if it would be something that has to be added to some code.
Well, to me, the widow's walk is a door, a window on the top story. That just has a little deck on it.
Right.
If you're at the window, you're at the height,
You're already at the height, yeah.
you know.
But your view is not quite as good.
Well, that's right.
Well,
Yeah,
You
coming-
get there, you can
coming
stand,
soon
take
on.
two
Right,
steps
so you're
forward.
already at the height, so it wouldn't.
Well, yeah, I'm sure question about height restrictions.
Which is the 30 feet currently.
Okay,
Think about, or I think you've got something there percolating on it.
yeah,
You
if you ever did an emergency tower, you'd have to go up.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, all right. Anything else from anyone? No, a visitor's comments not related to the agenda. No, well, okay. We have no public hearings, we have no unfinished business, we have new business, and we have trees and road name. Why, Lina brought up that in 2008, the planning commission submitted to the city council recommendations for zoning with trees. For Eric, you may not know, we've been working on this since May. So we have worked on this and hashed it up one side and down the other, a lot of work done by these two men. We're almost to a year. So, what I've done is I've asked Garrett to address us on some of his suggestions, what we can do from this point forward. So Garrett?
All right. So after the planning commission recommended approval of amendments to the zoning ordinance for the section on tree preservation, we took it to city council, presented the amendments, and they had a wide range of questions on them and concerns, and asked that we bring it back to the planning commission and work with the planning commission to make changes and resolve the issues and concerns that they had. And so what we've done is tried to summarize some of those concerns. We've also reached out to one council member that had a relatively large number of concerns, and they provided a letter to clarify what was on their mind, and we've attached that. We've attached that to the packet. But we've also summarized the issues in this memo, and I think that there's like a few different kinds of issues. One of them could be addressed by me doing a better job of representing the amount of work that you all did and the amount of opportunity that the public had to weigh in on the proposed amendments. I don't think I told them the exact number of meetings that you deliberated over this, the extent to which you deliberated over some of the issues that they also had concerns over. So I just want to acknowledge that that could have played a role, at least on some of the points here. And perhaps if I could communicate that better in another meeting, it would help us move forward with them. Second set of issues I would describe as ones that you all did not, I didn't recall you discussing in your meetings, and they're relatively straightforward. So city council members thought that there should be an exemption for certain invasive species, and they referenced some of those names in their meeting. They thought that there should be an exemption for multi-trunk trees. So these are trees that in some cases might look like large shrubs, where there's multiple trunks separating at the ground or not too high above the ground, so that if you could imagine trying to measure them at 4.5 feet above the ground, you'd wonder, which one should I measure, or should I add up the measurement of all of them? And they thought that at least some of them thought that only the largest trunk should be measured. And finally, they had some concerns about staff having the authority and having to spend their time and being liable for making determinations of which trees are hazardous or pose a danger to the public and which ones don't. And the recommendation from them that I took was that in those cases, the ordinance should not say that staff will make a determination of whether there's a danger. That should be up to an arborist. And related to that when there is a danger, there should not be any form of bureaucratic process that stands to slow down property owners' ability to correct a danger. Okay, so those are what I would call less complex issues. They could certainly be complex in their own ways, and then there are others that are more like broader concerns over property rights, and whether the amendments that Planning Commission proposed placed an undue burden on property owners, and where it sort of represented a lack of balance between tree protection and property rights. And then there were other counselors that thought that there should be more protection for trees. And that's where it felt complex, because there was conflicting feedback. So in any case, in this brief memo, I've tried to summarize these issues. And for the ones that I thought were less complex, I also went ahead and drafted some potential amendments for you to consider. And at the end of the memo, basically what I'm proposing and what I'm asking for is that you decide whether or not you want to take up the tree amendments and work on them again, and work through some of the issues that are summarized here, like just the ones that staff recently made some changes to and attached, or if you want to work on all of the issues and try to resolve them and send this back to city council. Or finally, the third option would be to say that you feel like you've worked on enough, and you have other things on the goals list that you want to work on, for example, and that you'll decline to take this up again. So I've tried to give you, well, you have the option regardless of whether I give it to you, right? You're the Planning Commission. But I've tried to give you a chance to engage in some of the less complex issues right off the bat, if you'd like to, with some draft changes. And if you'd like to do that, we can do that. And we can also discuss an approach to resolving some of the more complex, sort of value-laden issues around property rights and tree protection, if you'd like to do that as well.
Okay, and Garrett, am I right I believe this is what you told me, but I want to verify it, that if we, for instance, took what you gave us and said, well, these changes that you made in red, they kind of make sense to us. Am I right in saying that we would not have to have any more public hearings on this? And we could send it back to city council with those changes, or would we have to go through the whole process again?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Is that right, Peter? That they could
Right,
make a
the-
motion?
We could make a motion tonight. I think that there were, and I think Garrett very accurately described. I did not get a sense. I feel like there's one member of the city council that definitely articulated far more protections and a far more robust process as far as cutting trees goes. And my sense is there were two members of council that wanted clear and objective standards that were easy for people to understand, easy for staff to understand. Beyond that, far less regulation. And then there were two members of council that kind of, thought that they didn't really other than a kind of an appreciation for trees, didn't really give us a lot of direction as far as how they were leaning. So the points that I think it definitely benefits us clearing up are in one of the markups, the circumference of the tree was a different number of inches. And so they were like, well, which one does the planning commission want? Do they want I think it was 36 on one and 38 on the other. And I just thought the 36 was a Scrivener's error. It was just something that had been kind of that we all missed. And then the other one that I think was pretty clearly articulated was this issue of multi-trunk trees that Garrett deals with in his with his edits. So I think that those clarify the two issues that I know exist. And then as far as how much of your, so I think tonight you could, if you wish, I mean, it's obviously your choice, but you could send that. I really can't advise you on what else they would be looking for other than those two clarifications. And so I wouldn't want, and I'm not suggesting that talking a lot more about trees would be a waste of your time because trees are important, but there are other priorities on your list. And so I think the other thing we could do if this goes back to council is say, look, we really need some clarity on, because there were all sorts of ideas that were kind of mentioned, like a tree board, or like, how do we know if an arborist is accurate or not? And these sort of things that it didn't seem like it, I don't know that there was a majority there, but that would take us in a radically different direction than where we are now, which is clear, objective, and easy to understand. And to the extent that staff have to verify something, they know exactly what needs to happen. So I think that this current one helps the owners understand, helps city staff understand, and if city council has something radically indifferent in mind, it would be really beneficial for them to let us know.
Okay, thank you. So now a 7 out of clarity. We, and I try to avoid making my comments first, but I will. Well, 7, not very good, but his predecessor, we came to an agreement. We came to what I thought was, what I call a sweet spot. And one of my things that I say is I try to avoid anything that might send us to Luba. Anything that might be so strict that someone's going to want to take it further. And that's all I have to say on that. So, comments from anyone here about this? I can see all the question marks and the grins. Yes, John.
I strongly believe the last comment that Peter made is the right approach here, which is to go back to the city council and say, Look, tell us what it is you want. You know, you do not have a consensus. There's no point in us sending more stuff up to a city council that does not have a consensus. If they develop a consensus for what they want, and they want us to create clarifying language, and they want us to do some more work, of course, we're all happy to do it. But there's no point in us doing the work, it's kind of back up there for them to have clearly, and we know who some of the people are that feel different ways about this, and they feel strongly in different ways about this. They don't have a consensus. When they do, I think they should direct us to do the work. Until they do, I think we shouldn't touch it with that football.
I would agree with that. It seems like the list of concerns, and it's just a list, it's not a prioritized list, except for what's more complex, what's less complex. It also seems to me that we worked from the point of view of a problem we were trying to solve. We were trying to solve a situation where the city staff were kind of running around because somebody would complain about people cutting down trees. So we created a process. We weren't trying to protect trees or, you know, we were really trying to create a process to make things easier for the city staff and to generate the income required for their time, thus the permit part of it. So a little bit, we're in cross purposes from what I read anyway, into what the council is saying. So it feels like we're working at cross purposes with the council.
We do have the other option of saying, take it, we've done our work according to what we were originally saying, and we can vote and just send this back to them and say, write it your way. Which they can do.
Right.
Or this could be presented to them.
Right,
Say, this addresses some of your concerns.
right, but
That's it.
we could vote and say, we have done our work. Don, do you have a comment?
I do. Angelina, can you tell us how many complaints there have been about tree cutting since we passed this on to the city council, since we started working on this?
0.
So why is that? What's changed?
Winter.
I don't know,
That's a good point.
Okay, so,
honestly, I don't know.
right, so I think that also goes along the line with, we've had 6 public meetings about this, and how much feedback have we gotten from the public? Which has been minimal. The people that I've talked to, are they constituents, are they citizens or whatever, just friends, people in the community? One, they didn't even realize that this was happening. 2, they didn't think that it was a problem that needed to be solved. And then honestly, they were mostly concerned about this permitting process that try to answer the city's questions. And that's the part that I honestly mostly bought into, was making sure that the city had the information to be able to answer questions, and tracking that over a period of time. That seems very reasonable. But there are questions about the costs of that and all that kind of stuff. I mean, basically the question I got was like, why fix something that's not broken? I also got feedback like, this isn't Cannon Beach, and why are we messing with this? This is an area rich in trees and vegetation and that kind of stuff. And the pestering of property owners for maybe a small group of people who want to make some changes, that also kind of ruffled their feathers for sure. So I believe that, you know, what John and Judy said, if the council could come back to us with some more proper feedback, then I think that's something to take on. But I really appreciate what we have all done, and especially you two, you know, over that 6-month period, to create something which I thought was very reasonable and actually very conservative, you know, not making big changes and not making that kind of stuff. So you know, I'm not sure truly what the problem is. You know, there are other issues with the trees, believe it or not, that we're gonna probably have to deal with, but
What are you alluding to?
well, to be honest, like the public and the private partnership, you know, between homeowners and the city on trees that affect them. I think that's actually more of a specific issue that is not, there is no answer for it. There's never tried to be a solution for that. I think that's something actually that we should address.
Are you referring to the proposal to plant trees that we heard about?
It goes along those lines, you know, we did talk about having citizens plant trees in public areas. And, you know, honestly, at my property, that's a perfect example of somebody who did that. And it's turned into a bit of a catastrophe. And so I'm not comfortable with any of that. And honestly, we are trying to do some stuff on our property and the connected city property. And if I wasn't on the planning commission, I would never have even learned about any of this. I wouldn't have even known about this. So as a citizen who's trying to do things the right way, I'm, you know, I'm glad that we're working on this and talking about this. You know, and I may be before you guys some time down the road, but I think the idea to change the ordinance greater than what we already did seems to be a bold and unnecessary step.
So are you saying change it more than this proposal or change it more than our original proposal?
I thought our original proposal was a change up, especially in the permitting process.
Right,
But not changing the number of trees and we just actually made it simpler, I thought, to measure what a tree is and not a tree. I never even realized that there are things that weren't trees that are obviously trees, but now I do. It's great, but if, you know, you said the city council itself could write their own ordinance and they don't even really need us, right? They could just do it and it wouldn't come back to us.
they could take what we gave them and said, we want to change this to that. Have the public hearings, because they still have to have the public hearings. And then vote and enact something. We cannot solve the problem of disagreement and two sides. They have to solve that. All that we can do is give them our best work, which I think is what we did.
You know, I mean, Garrett mentioned maybe he could have explained better. I'm not saying, Garrett, you did anything wrong at all, but he's like, he thought he could have maybe explained better, like the efforts that we put in, and for us to just blindly grab into this bag and try to pull something out of it, that doesn't seem fair.
Well, but what Garrett has explained is that he didn't tell, on this list that Chad gave us, more public input, and I'm going, my gosh, we had at least 6 meetings. It was out on the city blog, it was in the newspaper. We communicated way beyond what would even be reasonable to expect. So I'm not getting that part. So I think Garrett felt like he could have gone into more details, what he said to me. And I hope I'm getting this right, Garrett, that you could just told the length of time we spent on and what kind of research was done and that. And informed a little better. Sometimes, you know, we go, oh, everyone knows, and we skip over it.
For sure.
So, you know, but.
And I'm sure that each of us, as we went through this process over that 6-month period, talked to our neighbors and talked to people and got feedback and all did come to the same conclusion that this is what we wanted to do. So I'm a little surprised that it got pushed back to us so quickly and haphazardly, honestly, so.
I watched the neighbor just chop down the trees. Because that was an easier solution to waiting for something like this to come along. We'll just chop them down now, because we don't need to worry about it, because we don't have anything to regulate them right now. Eric, I know you weren't here for the discussion, but you have some input.
You all know the story of the semi truck that drives under the bridge that's too tall for it, and gets stuck there. And the little boy watching this has a solution while the adults can't figure out what to do. And he just says, "Why don't you let the air out of the tires?" I'd like to be that little boy here coming in, but I don't really have the insight.
You got nothing. No air.
But I do have a question.
Yes.
So, Judy inferred that there was a problem you were trying to solve. Did the problem come from staff? Did staff say we're getting too many complaints and we should clean up our tree ordinance to try and alleviate those problems? Is that it originated?
Part of it,
Right.
part of it came from Sharon, who is now a city council member, who was a planning commissioner then.
Right.
Part of it came from her, that was important to her, that was a goal. But also the city, they get random complaints about so-and-so
Right.
chopped down a tree and it was beautiful and I loved it, and, or I don't know what the complaints are.
Right.
Right, or like chainsaws.
Yeah, people are calling it.
Holy
complaining
shit,
about
somebody's coming.
Yeah.
Too many
Right.
trees coming down for
Right.
construction.
I can understand.
Yeah.
All right, so there was a problem. There was a perceived problem by a planning commissioner and there was a perceived problem by staff. So we should address this, and that's how the doc came about.
Yes.
I just want to clarify just one thing, where the two problems were quite different. The problem that Sharon was talking about, we ended up not even deciding to discuss.
What was her concern?
That was what Don was talking about, which is she wanted the ability for private citizens to collaborate with the town in planting trees on public property.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
that, we really just put that, because there was no consensus whatsoever.
Okay, but the issue of citizen complaints and how
That
to
was
keep
what we
track.
did, was
Right. So then there's this lengthy email letter from Councillor Gould about what her concerns were. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, what is the broad community interest here? And maybe that wasn't conveyed well enough to the councillors. Did the councillors know why this came to them? Did they perceive that there was, you know, what problem it is the commission was trying to solve?
I can say two things. If they read our minutes from the planning commission meetings.
Right.
Or watched any of the videos, I guess there's a video they can watch, right, or something like that. All right, they would know.
Okay.
If they did that because it was discussed right from the get-go.
Right.
I do not know, Garrett's got his finger up. I don't know what Garrett said about the meeting. Garrett, did you talk to him about that?
Yeah, so we explained, I explained the goal of the amendments as addressing the procedural issues and the staff burden of responding to an excessive number of complaints and not always having awareness of what was going on around town when it came to tree cutting, and that this was going to potentially save time, increase staff awareness of tree cutting, and start to build a picture of tree cutting activity throughout the city. Where I think I fell short in my explanation was that I didn't explain that you all considered pursuing the goal of making more protective regulations for trees, and that you deliberated over that and decided not to pursue that goal.
Right.
And so it sort of left this opportunity for discussion at council where they thought, well, what about this other goal? You know, or I didn't explain the extent to which you considered all of the other things you could have done with this ordinance, and you declined to do that and have a pretty narrow focus in the end.
you know, one of her points in her letter, that when she talked to her neighbors or constituents about this, no one I spoke with was aware of the proposed changes to the ordinance. No one agreed with the need to make them. Most were angered when they learned about it. So what it strikes me as, it seems like there was a good purpose here. And clearly you did a lot of work. But maybe something was lost in communication of it. And I will see to whatever you all want to do, given all the work you put in. But it seems to me perhaps taking these issues of what was more complex, what was less, what Councilor Gould's concerns were. And if we made a pointed proposal and address those things, I mean, if you really want to have it, if you want to clean up the tree ordinance and you're really happy with what you created, maybe if you took one more stab at it by trying to address these things more pointedly, they would get the point and it would allay their fears. That's the way it strikes me.
Russ?
Well, what I disagree with there is that they're not reading between lines, like Gould's letter there. If what Ginny's suggesting, if she would, we had how many meetings, at least 4 meetings in like
We have more than
9 months or whatever. So
Right,
she's not
right,
paying attention to what we've done.
right.
Her comments indicate that.
Right.
So responding to that specifically, I think is not right. Or it's not, I don't think it's warranted. But anyway, what I would do is I rewrote one little thing. To me, they came to, they concluded that bushes, your rhododendron, which is 7 feet wide, is a tree. So you've got branches that are no bigger than my wrist in there, but so what I'm suggesting is that in definitions, we talked about for the purpose of this section tree, and in parentheses is defined as follows: any tree with a primary trunk with a primary trunk is what I've added, greater than 38 inches in circumference is a tree, at 4 feet is the tree. So if we do that and take out all the bushes and stuff that has multiple branches and we answer one of their questions or one of their concerns. And then after that, I agree with, you could just say, hey, send it back to them, but I don't want to send it back and say, you guys write it. Because then they're going to create something. I think if Sharon, I'm picking on Sharon, I guess a little bit, if she has her way, it's going to become a complex document. And I just, for the city's, for the citizens' purpose, your buddies, my buddies, I say, don't let them get their hands on it, even though they're able to. I mean, we can't stop them, but if we send it back and say, if that correction makes sense, we're in favor of our document standing as is.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right, and yes, okay.
And then they can either change the ordinance or not.
They're elected officials, so they have that right. We can't say, and keep your hands off,
I know, but if we say, write it yourself,
Well,
who knows what's going to become?
now, that was perhaps my misplaced sarcasm.
Okay,
If they have that option, but this is the proper way to do it, have it come through the planning commission for us to discuss it, to send them a recommendation, and then let them vote on it, and if they want to change any of the words. I felt in reading Dana's letter that I think she was really trying to figure out, maybe trying to be that negotiator between the different types, to get a little more information. I don't think she was opposed to it. I think she was just looking for more information. So that's kind of the way I read her letter. Have we missed any points, Garrett or Peter?
No, I think that, from a legal perspective, what you did originally is very clear, very objective. It should be easy for people to use. It should allow them to determine whether they need a permit or not, and then on what trees, and then go forward accordingly. I think that the changes that Garrett made, and also the change that was suggested today about the primary trunk, I think those help clarify things, going from diameter to circumference, that which you did previously, that definitely helps people. And then, I think in part, Councilor Gould may have been concerned that given this was sent back to you, would you listen to some of the comments that were made at the meeting and go in a more, I don't want to call it radical, but a far more, I guess, robust process. And then what I heard her say at the city council meeting is, struggling with, okay, at what point would changes that are being suggested impact our comp plan and goal 5 requirements? And would we need to crack open those documents? And what I heard her say, and my best recollection is, with these changes, it would not. But with some of the things that one of the counselors was suggesting, like a citizen tree board, would those require comp plan amendments? Possibly. So I think she may have been trying to signal to the planning commission to err on the side of kind of a light hand, so that we wouldn't trigger those far larger process as far as comp plan amendments.
And I think we tried to do that.
I think you did exactly that. I think the point that you made, Madam Chair, about not wanting to go to LUBA, which I very much appreciate, that what you've done is clarified some language that may not have been clear, and made it easier for people to understand when they would need a permit and when they wouldn't. And you, in my mind, accomplished that. So what I like to see is clear and objective code language, and that's what you gave them. They did have the question about 38 versus 36. This clarifies that as far as circumference. They did have the question about, multiple trunks or a rhododendron, where do you measure? This clarifies that as well. So the two things we know they wanted answers on, you're giving them answers on. And then the rest, they need to decide what they want to do.
38 inches is rounding up a 12-inch diameter.
Right.
Because it's 37.68 something, and today is Pi Day, remember? That's how we figure it, circumference. That's very important. It's Pi Day. This is a great day to discuss.
Can I ask Paulina, could I ask you a question about your 08 ordinance?
Yes.
Was that a permit? Did the planning commission, was that creating a permit thing, or was it just a general?
Okay, there was a little bit changed in the purpose. The word ecological resource was added. And to prevent any unnecessary environmental hazards caused by tree removal. So there was a little bit of change in that. And in a manner which trees that are removed protects remaining trees, so they didn't want you to go in there willy-nilly, but you gotta take that one out, take some care to not ruin all the rest. Then it gets into the permit.
So it was recommending a permitting process.
Yes. Trees proposed for removal shall be shown on any application to the planning commission. So if there was enough trees to be removed, it was actually on a picture, something picture. If there's a tree removal or site development is within the vicinity of any other tree where the city shall require an application tree removal permit, a site maintenance plan by a qualified arborist they added a little bit to what's already there.
What was the outcome of this process?
It was not approved by the council at that time.
So we're on track with what we have. We reinvented the wheel. I cannot, because I'm president, but I'm looking for I would like to hear someone propose a motion that really change that Russ made. We say, we stand by this and send it back to the
Do
city.
you have
council.
input, ma'am?
I do have one question.
Yes,
The part about invasive trees that was tentatively added here, is that covered in our noxious?
Yeah, any noxious weed would need to be removed, but according to the state of Oregon, there are no trees on the noxious weed list.
No, that's okay, it's a weed, not a tree.
Correct.
that's a very
So,
small.
yeah, went through the noxious weed list to try to find a tree that would be considered noxious, so they don't have anything.
So like a holly tree is not considered invasive, it's really not noxious, it's invasive.
No, not on there.
If we leave this wording in here, is it specific to these, like 4 trees?
If we leave it in, it means those trees are excluded from
Those
this,
4 specific.
those 4 specific ones. I can say that I had holly growing on my house in Seaside, I just pulled it out. Because that's what you usually do with things you don't want in your yard when they're small. But
So these would not be considered trees, but.
no, they were at that
No,
point,
I'm
like,
saying, that's my
right.
point, these are not.
These are not considered trees that fall underneath this because they are invasive.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion that may not be exactly what you intended, I'll try. I'm gonna make a motion that we not respond to the city council at all in regards to this, and that we not submit this back in any way. Because I don't believe they have any similar motions, so clean it up the language, but you get the idea. They don't have consensus, there's no point sending it back. Many of them don't want permitting at all. So my
And somebody-
proposal is, we don't send it back at all, and we're done.
We're not gonna stay on the goals list, but you made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
John's made a motion, Don is seconding that we do nothing. Do we have discussion?
I don't think we should do nothing.
I do not think we should do nothing. It would stay on our goals list.
I
No.
don't think we should.
It went on the goals list prior to my time. I'm curious if it went on the goals list with Sharon's encouragement. And I'm not picking on Sharon. I know this is something she cares about. Yeah, I know she cares about
None of us
this.
are thinking.
So is that how it got on the goals list? Anybody with history?
Yeah, my
So-
feeling goes back to you.
I've had some conversations with some folks about this, and one of the things that might be helpful is to just go back through this again, and you kind of started this, Judy. You were talking about what was the process, so Sharon, then Commissioner Sharon, now Councilor Sharon, Commissioner Sharon wanted to talk about trees, she was concerned about all the trees that were being cut down in town, and that we did not have a process to even know what was going on. And so when she would come and say, hey, so-and-so has cut down a bunch of trees, the city really didn't know about that, we would respond and we'd be either, oh, it's okay, or this person's going too far, we need to stop them. Most of the time it was okay. It still wasn't something that sat correctly with Councilor Sharon, because she'd like to see more process in tree removal, being is that the person has to consider maybe changing the way they're constructing their property so they don't have to remove trees. Or if they did have to remove trees, they'd have to get an arborist to go ahead and take a look at that. Considering things like other trees that could be affected and all of that. You folks went through all of those ideas and decided, and please don't let me put words into your mouth. But you decided that, hey, how about we start with a process so we can begin collecting information, the staff can be better informed of what's going on in the community. That way we can handle complaints as they come in and say, no, that person's actually got a permit, everything's okay, as long as they're doing the 5 trees, and we'll keep an eye on it. So you established a process that said, hey, yes, let's do a permit. Let's allow people to cut down trees. Let's actually clarify a few of the things on there and make it a little bit easier for staff and the people to realize the size of the trees at 4.5 foot breadth height and working on circumference versus what have you. But that you wanted to keep it an easier process that the staff could do and that we would collect information. But at that point, you weren't interested in making things more restrictive. If that is true, a recommendation would be that maybe put together a couple of paragraphs as to why you made the decision that you did. If that's true, what I just said, and then give that to the council and then let them know that at this point, either A, we choose not to, we stand by the decisions that we've made and we'd like you to reconsider the work that we have done. And then we're not really considering anything additional or make any changes that you might think that would be good. But when we brought this up and we had this discussion in front of the council, as you can see, we did not receive a consensus. So with that lack of consensus and maybe some reasoning, maybe those paragraphs as to why you made the decisions that you made to forward the comments and the ideas that you had, if we could get a little description of that, then they can have a better understanding. There still are a couple on the council that would like to consider some more robust changes to this to make it more restrictive about cutting trees, or at least thoughtful before they cut the trees. But I'm not picking up that you'd like to go there at the moment, that you'd like to keep it the way that it is. So a small description and pick it back up to them and let them know that you'd like to stand behind your work as it is now, and for them to reconsider this, and here's the reasons that we did it. Then they can do whatever they want with it.
Chad, can you tell, sorry,
Just wait a second.
sorry.
March 9th meeting. Buffer mentioned she would like to go through a tree ordinance update to be added to the goals list for discussion on the zoning ordinance on the goals list as a tree planting process. The commission stated they would like a copy of the city ordinance and Cannon Beach ordinance in the packets for the next hearing to take a look at 12 months ago.
I noticed it was tree planting process.
Right.
No,
You just
tree
said it.
permitting process.
Oh, okay.
You misunderstood me. Tree permitting process. So that's, I'm sorry, Don, I thought, give you that heads up. Secondly, if there were going to be any paragraphs, it would really be for Garrett to handle that. He is our official spokesperson for us, in the sense that he's the interim planning, what is his title?
He's our
Planner.
He's our planner.
Our planner, okay. Go ahead, Don, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I interrupted you first. Chad, how is the the development of the permitting process going for you guys?
We have the process, and I think there might be a draft permit that was developed in regards to this as well. But that's as far as we got. When we did get consent from the council, we haven't been working on it other than bringing it back to you.
And if I could, I think the essence of the disagreement within the council, and even to some degree within our group, which is probably cool, is that permitting or no permitting. It's not about all this other stuff. The other stuff is just around the edges of it. There's people who believe that we should add a permitting process, people who believe we shouldn't have a permitting process. And that's why I don't believe that sending this back to the council in any form is productive, because they don't agree with the whole purpose of this is. They're not gonna suddenly vote yes because we've changed it to multi-trunk versus single trunk.
Yes, Eric.
So one of the things on the list here was include a purpose statement for the section. And that purpose section might address these things that Chad was just referring to. This is why we have this section, so that the city can address complaints and we have a better inventory of what's being taken and why, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if we gave them a good purpose, wrote it into the section and then cleaned these things up a little bit, maybe then they'd see the light.
Well, we have a purpose.
There is a purpose.
There is.
Oh, okay.
And totally wondered, well, maybe not everyone at one time.
Maybe it needs to be edited to address what some of their concerns are.
I would say this, Gary, I would not be part of a process that was trying to rewrite ordinance and you had to come up with your purpose. Those are words that get thrown in there and then someone reads them 5 years and they're going, what in the world were they talking about? That's my personal opinion. We have a motion. Do we have more discussion? Hearing no more. All those in favor of John's motion, which was to, I want to say the words right, to do no more work on this at this time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
2 ayes, all those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Do I have another motion?
I'll make the motion.
Go for it.
I'll make the motion that we,
You got that?
with the addition
Just wait a
of,
second, just wait a second. We're having to catch up here.
okay. That we keep the document as we have it in front of us and as they received it with, and with the addition and definitions, number B or alphabet B. Tree is defined as follows: any tree, new wording with a primary trunk. Put right in there, and then the rest of that stays the same. We do that and resubmit it with, as Chad was suggesting, with Garrett putting some paragraphs that maybe describe our efforts and our intentions with hopefully some, warm and fuzzy efforts to help make this come in a little better light.
Warm and fuzzy cannot be part of your motion.
Well, then, feel free to
Okay,
say
so Russ has moved that to resubmit the amended document that Garrett amended with the addition of,
Amended or original?
well, no, the red.
Oh, I'm not sure that's what you meant.
No, that's what he meant,
no, what we're looking at,
Okay.
what I was looking at.
With the changes.
with the changes,
Okay.
Okay, wait a minute, for
yes.
amended or just original?
No, with the amended red changes.
Yep.
With the addition of the words in definition B, any tree with a primary trunk greater than 38 inches. Correct? All right, do I have a second to Russ's motion?
I'll second that.
Judy has seconded. Do we have further discussion?
Yeah, I'm confused now.
Yes.
I got the part with the primary trunk.
Right.
As an addition. All the other stuff that's red on the document we're looking at, we
Stay.
are not recommending.
No, we are recommending
No, we're recommending that.
the red.
I was saying, this document we're looking at, with this phrase I added, is what I'm suggesting.
So now, why do we need the phrase if it already has that addition when a tree has multiple trunks or branches below that last sentence?
Because,
We need one or the other.
because it's there, I was looking at like, okay, that was what they put in, or maybe Garrett put in to placate them, I don't know where that came from. But yes, I understand what you're saying. That last sentence could disappear from the bottom definition.
And I know that.
I would leave the part about what common hawthorn, call it, et cetera, which is,
But eliminate the last sentence.
yeah.
We have a new
It's not
proposal.
gonna be, it's never gonna be honest.
So then I'm modifying it to get rid of the last sentence in definition.
You want, all right. You're saying when a tree has multiple trunks or branches below the measurement height, the measurement shall only be applied to the largest trunk or branch. You want to eliminate that.
Well, it's essentially being.
Okay.
being superseded by-
I'm going to put Robert's rules on you.
Oh, okay.
You have to move to amend your motion. Do you move
I
that?
move to amend the motion by eliminating the last sentence and definitions defining multiple trunk shrubs.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second to the amendment to the original motion?
I'll second.
Judy has seconded. The amendment is to remove when a tree has multiple trunks or branches below the measurement height, the measurement shall only be applied to the largest trunk or branch. All those in favor say aye.
Can I?
Yes, we have discussion. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm not a tree guy. But if I wanted to plant a cherry laurel, could I?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just saying they're not trees, they're not even trees at all. We're saying they're not even relevant to this ordinance.
So who,
I can describe the situation if you like.
His
who,
maple tree?
what did those trees do
Can
wrong?
barely see.
They're not trees.
So like, you know, we don't have a lot of capital expenditure for new pens.
Well, we have your budget.
I'm losing control.
Little bit,
No,
A little bit.
sorry.
All right. Chad, budding artist, yes.
Oh, okay. I'll clarify what this is, and this was a complaint that I received from Sharon Hopper when I allowed a tree to come down one time. Because the tree was, it was a trunk until it was cut up quite a bit and pruned badly. And then from there, it grew out to about 5 different trees. So at 4.5 feet high, it happened that none of these trees with the current ordinance was, none of these branches were 12 inches in diameter or greater. So I allowed the tree to come down. The trunk that was down here below 4.5 inches was big, because sometimes they spread out and then trees come up from the top of it. I allowed this person to take this tree down because at 4.5 inches or 4.5 feet, these branches, none of them were 12 inches and above. That upset that Sharon at that point because I allowed that to happen. So this change that's being requested is to say that if there's a tree like this and it's been pruned properly and it's growing out multiple branches, that we are not to pay attention to the 4.5 foot mean breast height, that we are to then go down onto the trunk and measure that trunk, and if it's over 12 inches, I would not allow that tree to come down. That's what that amendment does.
These
So
are
none, yeah. So it would prevent a few trees from coming down, although they would continue to grow in the manner that they have. Maybe they become dangerous later because of the split off trunk. Maybe they don't. So I'm not sure what it would be
Okay,
fixing.
the problem is that it doesn't tell them that you take the measurement lower.
Yeah, the intent wasn't to measure lower. Clearly, it wasn't being clear enough. The intent was to say if a tree is split below 4.5 feet, you just measure it at 4.5 feet on the largest trunk or branch, and if it doesn't meet the circumference threshold, then it's not a tree with any permitting implications.
And that's currently what we're doing now.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's
No.
fine.
So with this tree at 4.5 feet, with the current ones, you could still say, okay, take it down because it's not,
My interpretation of the code as it is now, I will allow that to come down.
okay, all right. Okay,
I still stand by my edited.
okay, all right.
I'm having just deja vu.
Your deja vu,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
It's so nice.
So did I take a vote on Russ's amendment? Did I take a vote?
No.
No, okay, all those in favor of Russ's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
The amendment is.
Right, okay,
Can I get you to raise your hands because I have no idea?
Everybody does.
Okay.
we all did, all right. So, back to Russ's original motion with we would add with a primary trunk in that first line on definitions, any tree with the primary trunk. And delete when a tree has multiple trunks or branches below the measurement, we would delete that. That is the motion as it stands right now. Yes, Paulina.
Are we also talking about the stuff on the back?
Oh, we can. That's part of our discussion. We
Because
can.
right now, with the motion that we have, we would allow these changes to. go
Yes.
through.
Maybe,
Yes,
Okay,
yes, Eric.
So,
Be short.
I'm just still a little confused about part B, the definition.
Part B.
With the primary trunk, does it have to be measured 4.5 feet?
Yes.
So in this particular case, if that primary trunk is below 4.5 feet, that tree cannot be removed.
It's kind of what I'm getting.
Is that correct?
No, no, I
No,
think.
no,
It can
It
be.
can be removed.
No, because it's not, that tree right there is not measured 38 inches at 4.5 feet.
Right, so it can be removed.
Anything
It's only the
smaller,
ones that are bigger than 38.
anything under 38
remove them
is
down.
removable, you just go cut it down and nobody can do
Right.
it. There's no permit, no
If
nothing.
it's greater than 38 inches,
Uh-huh,
but it has to be at 4.5 feet.
Right.
yes,
Okay, and if it's greater than 38 inches, but it's below,
You're only measuring it 4.5 feet.
yes,
you're only measuring at 4.5 feet.
right.
And that's not my interpretation of the change.
Of the change that's being proposed?
Correct, the one that's in red that's on the document.
No, but that's not the proposal we have in front of us right now.
I'm sorry.
We have the primary change where that comes out.
Okay.
And it just says primary trunk, or primary, any tree, what was it again?
Any tree with a primary trunk greater than 38 inches in circumference as measured 4.5 feet above the existing grade.
That's it. And the last sentence that you were describing here, we eliminated.
Yeah, so that, what does that change?
However, that is not a complete sentence. Any tree with a primary trunk greater than 38 inches in circumference as measured 4.5 feet above the existing grade and excluding common hawthorn and oh, I got it, it does, yeah, okay, it does, it's, okay, I got it, it is a complete sentence, excuse me, I wasn't reading the sentence right. All right, so that's what it's saying, Chad, at 4.5 feet, if the primary trunk is 38 inches or larger, they have to go through all the,
Yeah, they're not able to cut it down without coming to the planning.
right,
Which is not a change from what we initially came up with.
right,
Okay,
that's, do we all agree with that?
so what did we fix with the amendment?
Because they had talked about trees that have multiple branches, and we're saying, ignore the multiple branches, just focus on the primary trunk.
Unless it's at 4.5 feet.
Now, to your point, there may not be a primary trunk identifiable at 4.5 feet. Our current proposal that we're voting on, or about to vote on, does not address the issue that you've raised about, there is no primary trunk at 4.5 feet. The drawing did. But we're never gonna come up with a proposal that covers every possible scenario.
Wait a year, the tree will grow a little bit.
The problem that I see with this is that, I don't know how many times I walked on the dunes with Sharon, not Sharon, with other counselors, with you. And the trees had already been cut down, and basically you're looking at a trunk that looks
A
like
stump,
this.
yeah, a
And
stump.
we would come and I would say, what's up? And you'd say, well, at 4.5 feet, it was this big, or it had multiple trunks. Without some pictorial evidence of that, there's just no proof one way or the other. Well, so not permitting these things, even if it does have multiple tops, it's not gonna stop 20 phone calls to you.
However, if the permitting process is put into effect in the system that I have, I can upload and attach pictures.
Yeah, and so we would have, that's why the permitting process was discussed in the first place, so that we would have somebody come to us and say, I want to remove these 5 trees. City would go out and check them really quickly before they were cut. Thumbs up, we're good to go. Then we get complaints later and somebody looks at the stump and says, well, the stump is this wide, but yes, the tree grows like this. The 4.5 feet high was only this big.
Right.
And we had that on the permit, we took the measurement, and then that would help take care of that complaint.
But isn't this what we're about to vote on, saying, well, we don't even consider that a tree, so it doesn't, so the tree permit doesn't apply?
That's correct.
That's correct.
And I'm saying, I think that could be problematic for the people who we are actually trying to help here.
Well, this actually is supposed to, as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, but this is actually supposed to implement to where. Well, yeah, I get what she's saying, they wouldn't have to.
Yeah, if they've met on their own measurement, it's not, they're not gonna go for a permit at all.
Yeah, let's not forget, if there's a tree at 4.5 feet that's 50 inches. Right? The homeowner can take that tree.
No, up to 5 of them.
Up to 5 of them,
With the
Up to
current
5.
address.
up to 5 of them, it going, well, today, they could just take 5 of them right now.
But they'd have to permit this situation.
Well, there's not a permit process yet.
Right, but if we pass.
But the permit, so right now, all we're saying is under 38 inches. It doesn't, I can take I'm not gonna say that, a homeowner could take 100 of them,
Mhm.
because those aren't trees. That's what we're doing, is just defining that a tree is this and outward, and there's 5 allowed. Anything less than that is bush. And there's no bush permitting process.
Yeah, keep in mind that the current law, not that we're looking at, the one that's currently in the books, already says that, it just uses diameter and not circumference.
But there's no, they don't have to come to city hall, people can just take down 5 trees a year without any permit.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to fix.
And that's exactly what we were trying to fix, and make it easier for people to measure that and make it easier for the staff to track that. And it seems, which I, go back to John's motion, I thought that's what we did, and now we're back in the bailiwick of which way this is gonna go. And again, I don't know what the cherry laurels ever did to anybody that they're on this list, but
I'm sorry, a tree of heaven? Oh, gosh.
it sounds horrible.
I don't know what a tree of heaven looks like.
There were a lot of trees of heaven where I grew up.
Okay, I have never seen them. I would get rid of Russian olive trees, but that's my personal issue. We have a motion. We have talked about this. Can we take a vote?
Not yet.
Out of
I'm sorry.
Yes, Eric,
I'm sorry, I just have to clarify this thing.
yes.
Because if you have this very large trunk with a whole bunch of shrubs and it goes up to 35 or 40 feet, so it's this large structure, but it's multi-trunk, and you have this very large base,
Yes,
but that very large base is below 4.5 feet.
yes.
By virtue of what we're about to write, a person could cut that down without getting the permit.
Yes.
And that would make the neighbors angry. They just cut down this 35-foot tree. And they didn't, and the city doesn't know about it because they didn't need to get a permit because the primary trunk was though very large, was below 4.5 feet. And that sounds like what we don't want to do. You don't want to allow them to cut down a 40-foot tree, shrub or multi-lobed bush without the city being notified about that. And the way it's written, if you had this very large trunk, but was short, they can cut that down without any permit. And I don't think we want to allow, that's not.
I would disagree that it's not what we intend, because the current law already allows them to do that.
But we're trying to change that.
Well, we're trying to change that in the most limited way we
Right,
possibly
we just
can.
want them to come to the city and let them know they're gonna do it.
Well, but again, even that's contentious, so we're trying to make.
I understand that.
If we were to change this to be a height restriction.
No, I'm not trying to do that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to solve the problem we're trying to solve, which is let the city know when you're trying to cut something down that is substantial.
Yeah, the net's too big.
Yeah, what is that?
And, you know, what you're talking about is the one out of all the trees in the village,
Yeah.
maybe there's one tree like that and there's
Well, there was
200
there was
spruces
one
that
there.
are
Yeah.
10 feet.
And what would probably happen is that ice storm or the wind will come along with the trunk, but that much height and that small a trunk, it's gonna get blown over anyway. But what I really wanted to say was, there is not a perfect solution. I can hear what you're saying, so you measure 2.5 feet or 2 feet. 4.5 feet, somewhere, someone way back when, and we don't know, came up with that measurement. 4.5 feet, 4.5 feet, that would be easy for Chad or anyone else that went out to measure it. And we're trying to help just a little bit.
Right.
And the really great thing is that we can do what we can do our best at this point. And 5 years from now, a different planning commission can say, we've got another issue or something. These guys aren't, since they're living, they can be changed. We can only try to help, we're trying to help the staff. Essentially. Because I hear what you say, we all hear what you say.
I was just trying to address this issue that
Yeah.
happened once.
Yeah,
No matter what level we designate, though, there's gonna be trees that don't fit that. So your
Right.
point that we can't come up with a perfect formula, I think is really important.
Because as it stands right now, Chad said he had to go approve that tree. Well, by definition, Chad did not have to approve that tree.
but they asked.
But they asked, but technically, Chad did not have to.
It could
He wouldn't be notified.
But when you monitor them, put in word on it. And you gave permission.
Yeah, I mean, when I was receiving a lot of complaints about the trees being cut down, and then I didn't have a way to say that this was either correct or incorrect, what they were doing, I thought what you came up with was really good. And that would at least get us started.
Right. And do you think this new wording solves that?
Can we reread the new wording? Yeah, one more time. Please.
Definition. For the purpose of this section, tree is defined as follows. Any tree with a primary trunk greater than 38 inches in circumference as measured 4.5 feet above the existing grade and excluding common hawthorn, English holly, cherry laurel, and tree of heaven.
So that doesn't change the ordinance, because currently at 4.5 feet high, if the trunk is less than 38 inches in diameter, they can take it.
And we didn't intend to change it in that order.
We did
Okay.
not intend to change the definition. All we intended to do was change it from diameter, which is a little more difficult to measure
Correct.
than circumference.
So, yeah, so that, I'm not sure what the change is changing, from what you already came up with.
The only thing that was with a primary trunk, which
That was one of the gripes from city
At
council.
4.5 feet, typically the trunk is not primary, it's split off at that point in the trees that we're seeing, so it really doesn't change anything.
no, it really doesn't change
Okay.
anything.
Now, it does make these trees legal, the other ones that are mentioned, the tree of heaven,
Yeah,
the holly. Am I able to allow those trees to be cut down or not?
They're not trees.
they're not
They're not
trees.
trees.
They're excluded definition because they are invasive.
I can work with that.
You can work with that.
Before we vote, can I just get some feedback from the staff on the part F on page 2 with regard to an arborist recommendations about safety hazards and Garrett's note that city staff don't have time or expertise to determine safety.
I don't know if it's time or expertise on safety. One of the issues is that we can, when I allow a tree to be cut down that is dangerous, that's over that size. So here's what happens. I'll just tell you how this kind of comes down. It's where I'll say, you can cut down up to 5 trees per year on your property, and they'll cut down 5 trees, and then they'll get to the 6th one, and they'll say, yeah, that one's dangerous. Whereas in advance, I could have included that in the 5, and then they would have been restricted. Afterwards, they're like, well, these ones are dangerous over here, so we gotta get rid of them, and so they actually get to 8 trees or 6 trees or whatever. So that's one of the situations that happens. The other situation that happens is we've got the no man's land trees. These are the ones that are in the right of way that the city says are not our trees because the city didn't plant any trees. The homeowner says, well, they're not my trees because they're on city right of way. And that tree is dangerous. If I look at it, it's leaning, it's obvious that it's damaged. There's rot, or there is something that's cracking or ready to go, or a spiral crack that's going up it that makes it a dangerous tree. Yeah, I can see that. But for example, there's one going on 7th Street right now where the gentleman's been trying to get us to remove it for years. I don't see the reason to remove it. I don't see the danger. He does. So what I told him to do was to go ahead and he can hire an arborist. And if that tree is deemed dangerous, now it's the city's responsibility. It's in our right of way and it's a dangerous tree. I will have that tree removed. There are obvious times to where it's like, this is dangerous and it needs to be fixed right now, a hanging branch or widowmaker, those sorts of things. What this proposal is that instead of being able to take care of those situations on an as-needed emergency basis, is that we would be hiring or looking at having an arborist come in and doing this, creating a delay, creating some expense, and potentially putting the city at liability if we're unable to get it. But I think there are some people out there that don't trust that the city staff knows what a dangerous tree looks like and would then allow somebody to cut down a tree that wasn't dangerous.
I don't read this quite the way that you do, because it says may be removed without first obtaining a permit if an arborist recommends. They don't have to hire an arborist. They could still come to you.
Any ambiguous language is going to create an issue where somebody comes in and says, well, why didn't you have an arborist? Well, it was obviously a dangerous tree. What do you know about trees? Are you a licensed arborist? No, I'm not a licensed arborist. So it's a little ambiguous.
So you don't like this language in F1.
It would be, if we required everybody to get an arborist to get down a dangerous tree, then that's time, money, and potential liability.
But it doesn't say that. It doesn't say it's required.
If we. Yeah, that's really a no-win situation for the staff.
You prefer this language to be stronger.
I would like to be able to take care of a dangerous tree immediately if I needed to.
What if?
Well, you can.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
You can't, Chris.
It's right in E1, it says you can.
Does it Does it have to be in the zoning code if you can't make a decision? You're fully capable of calling an arborist, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be in the zoning code that you
No.
can do that.
No, but I think that some, people would prefer that we prevent the staff from being able to make those calls and then have an arborist come in and make those determinations.
But people don't always get what they prefer.
Just, that's where I was seeing that kind of going.
Because, as John pointed out, criteria number 1, necessity to remove trees which poses a safety hazard. So you can grant then a major tree removal permit because you can see it's a safety hazard. But I see exception down there, 1 as being, well, I disagree with Chad. I'm gonna go get a arborist. Or whatever, they don't know. So it gives them another way to do it, but they certainly have the first choice to come to you or whoever you're designated.
That's currently how I'm operating now.
Right,
Currently, I don't have an issue with this, other than when I do allow it to have happen, I'll have some people come in afterwards and say, who are you, the expert? All right, yeah, that's it. So this person, who, and then when Sharon was talking about that, that frustrated her, that the staff was able to do that.
okay, well, then she could go, or the person could, an arborist. Right, I mean,
No,
huh?
no,
No, not if it's not her tree, but the only person that should be requesting to be taken down is the person that, whose land it's on. Or if your neighbor's land is gonna fall on your house, yes. It's like, yes.
I feel,
We'd be,
having an arborist is a fine idea, but remember the storm in 2007 when there were trees all over the place and how many arborists could get to Gearhart? And there's trees and Chad's driving around saying that's dangerous. Homeowners are trying to figure it out. I mean,
It doesn't require an arborist, not what it says. It says that you don't have to get a permit if you have an arborist. That's all it says.
Well, he's saying in 2007, there were so many damaged trees that were dangerous. They were in the road and all over the place.
right,
I think if, so, I mean, I think we're putting Chad, especially like in a little difficult spot here with requiring an arborist and reporting to city council and trying to deal with this, making these changes to this ordinance. Which doesn't solve the problem that the city asked us to help them with.
I think it will solve most of the problems. It will take care of the majority of the problems in the sense that people will know, I wanna take out these trees. They are this big, I wanna take them out for whatever reason. They'll get a permit. Then when someone calls in, Mrs. Smith down the street, it says they're taking out their trees. And Chad can say, if they requested a permit, it was granted. These trees are this size, these trees pose a danger, these trees are invasive, whatever the reason. And we're trying to alleviate some of the complaints, and that was always our only goal.
I
was still-
understand that.
But you think this won't help?
Well, we already are allowed to remove dangerous trees. You're already allowed to remove 5 trees annually. So I don't think you even need a reason to remove those 5 trees, do you?
But if you're,
I mean, I'm not saying not the permitting process, I'm actually all
yeah,
for that.
you can remove it to 5 trees without any reason.
I don't either. This isn't Russia, you know?
Yeah.
That's a line from a movie. Anyway, so are you saying you want to add this, Paulina, this F section?
I would not change it at all,
Okay,
Meaning what, you leave this red in or not in?
not in.
Look, and then we have to vote down the one we got and start a new one.
no, we can amend our motion, but you only have 2 amendments, then you have to start over again.
Make a motion, to amend the motion on legal, by saying we do not make any changes to section F.
All right, Paulina has made a motion that instead of putting in the, I'm gonna rephrase it. That instead of putting in the red, we would leave it, the city administrator, because this was what the original said. The city administrator or designate may grant the immediate removal of trees which pose a safety hazard or dangerous condition for a required septic system emergency repair. That's what the original wording said.
Or for a required septic system.
Or, oh, I'm sorry, or for a required, I missed that word, or for a required, okay, so that is Paulina's. Amendment.
Second.
Right, do we have a second on it?
Second,
Russ has seconded it. Further discussion? All right, we have an amendment to pull out basically just leave it as it was originally stated.
I'm sorry, the online packet doesn't have E. It is only,
What?
The online packet does not have this. So
It-
Chad, Helena, and no one out there has it. We're the only ones that can see it.
Oh.
Good.
It's
could you read what was in there before? Because here's my concern.
Okay,
There were some cities in the Portland metropolitan area that declined to give people a permit to cut down a tree. These are cities with very strict tree ordinances, despite those people having an arborist report saying the tree was dangerous. Some of those dangerous trees during the ice storm fell and crushed people's houses. And cities have broad sovereign immunity, but in these instances, I am concerned that those cities are going to potentially have to pay because people had made them aware of the dangerous condition. They had sought to remedy it, and the city had said no. So my thought was, if Chad can tell that it's a dangerous tree by looking at it because it's leaning over or something of that nature, it's clearly rotten, then that's one thing. If you can't tell whether the tree is dangerous or not, and the people hire an arborist, and the arborist, you know, they're trained experts, are like, yes, that is a dangerous tree, it should be taken down. At that point, the tree can be taken down. Regardless of whether they've cut down 5 trees that year or not. So what I was attempting to, what I have kind of suggested is, and we're assuming good faith on everyone's behalf, but that there be that alternate way for a property owner to demonstrate why the tree should be cut down beyond just a visual inspection.
But if I can add something or bring something up to you, Peter, if you look at E criteria, number 2 says, it says that the necessity to remove trees which are diseased, evidence of disease may be provided by a qualified forester or arborist. That's introducing the arborist back into the equation if we delete it out of number 1 of the red exception.
So
still,
the online packet has A, B, C, and D. And that's where it ends.
In the email, Peter, I just emailed you the.
Page 2.
And my apologies, that was the same thing. I pulled mine off online and it only had one side, so I never had the back side.
it's part of our plan.
That's why I was looking at it. As I read it here, it says a tree posing a safety hazard or dangerous condition may be removed without first obtaining a permit if an arborist recommends removal as a corrective action. So, John, if you have a tree there, it's dangerous, you get an arborist to take a look at it, he writes it up, you cut it down, I come to you, I'm like, what's going on? You show me the arborist report, I give you the thumbs up. In such cases, the condition and corrective action shall be documented in writing by an arborist and submitted to the city with a tree removal application within 10 days after the corrective action has occurred. Okay, that makes sense. The next one does not. Currently, what it says, now I'm going to read through the piece that was marked out here. Currently, what we have is the city administrator or designee may grant the immediate removal of trees which pose a safety hazard or dangerous condition.
That comes out.
Right, okay, so that's currently what we have. Now we're changing that to say the city administrator or designee may grant the immediate removal of trees for a required septic system.
Right.
So this takes away my ability to get rid of dangerous trees.
no, but
Why?
Paulina we just took it back to the first way you read it by virtue of Paulina's edit or her
Okay, and so your edit would say what?
It
was,
would get rid of number one altogether,
Okay,
and it would,
Just take us
just
back
be
to
just
original
what
wording.
you just read. In other words, don't change anything under section F.
so section F number 2 would then continue to read, the city administrator designate may grant the immediate removal of trees which pose a safety hazard or dangerous condition.
Or for,
Or for a required septic system repair, leave it the way it was,
okay,
Yes,
okay.
So get rid of the highlighted red.
except I'm hearing from Peter that that's giving him heartburn.
I think that gives Peter and I what we need to be.
No, it's not, not according to Peter. Peter,
Peter
Say
likes
again?
number one.
yeah, he wrote number one.
I don't know, no.
What I'm suggesting is that we make it clear that if somebody hires an arborist and the arborist says the tree is a dangerous tree, that the tree gets cut down. Because if we're aware of the danger and we prevent them from solving the problem, then we potentially have some liability. So that was my concern. So when you guys were having a discussion, I couldn't see the letter. And so I just wanted to make sure that we had language in there that someone could get an arborist, get an opinion, and cut the tree down. And the reason I want that language in there is because if they don't get an arborist, if they're like, we think the tree's dangerous, and we're like, we don't know about that. Here's what you can do. You can get an arborist and then decide, because you've already cut down 5 trees. So if they don't get an arborist and then the tree falls down, what we're able to demonstrate is there was a path that would have allowed them. We alerted them to the fact that if an arborist said the tree was dangerous and should be brought down, we would allow it. So we're mitigating our liability, because the question then the person is like, well, why didn't you do that? That's what I was trying to get at. And I didn't have this language in front of me when you guys were having the conversation. And so I was concerned that we might be taking kind of that off ramp away. But I'm no longer concerned about that.
By keeping it.
Well, you should be concerned because the current proposal is to remove the language that you're.
Okay, then I'm very concerned.
I,
I just went from blissful ignorance to concern again.
okay, so, but we got a second on that, right? Second that. Polina moved that we removed the part in red, basically, from the exception. Go back to the original language only. Peter has told us his opinion. He is trying to say, okay, you have an arborist. I think what I understand is trying to do is you have an arborist that says it's dangerous. I don't need to drive down to the city. I don't need to make an appointment with Chad. I just take the tree down there. A septic system repair is a whole nother thing. You don't want to go through the whole process. Because of course, there are people that plant trees right on top of the thing. So we have a motion. Do we have any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Is that amendment?
This is amendment to the motion
Okay.
to remove the part in red under exception F. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. All right, we are back to our original motion. Our original motion is still everything that.
Do we not, I'll ask him Peter this question. Criteria, the number number 2. You have that with you now?
Yeah,
Where it says necessity to remove trees which are diseased, evidence of disease may be provided by a qualified forester or arborist. Does that not give the city the arborist factor?
The problem is they still have to request a permit.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
This is a major tree removal.
With the exception
Well, that
F.
doesn't give, well, the exception is.
No permit needed, just do it.
I see.
Okay,
Okay.
you got it?
I heard an outstanding concern, which is that in F2, we've taken away Peter's authority or Chad's authority to grant an exception when there's an obvious safety hazard. And perhaps that's something that we shouldn't do. Like, yes, you can have an arborist determine that there's a safety hazard, or if it's obvious to Chad or his designee, that also works.
Right.
Is
No, we
that
got
so?
that.
So in F2, the language that is struck through,
Yeah, we should have done it.
it sounds like maybe you wanted to consider not striking that through
Right.
under F2.
That is Chad what he wants.
Right.
Yeah, that is exactly what we
Trees
want.
that pose a safety hazard.
Yeah.
Or for requires this.
Because then it allows the city administrator to do the
Right.
same thing as the arborist.
Exactly. That would be perfect.
All right.
So
We're
have
going to throw out Robert's rules of order, so I'd like to make a motion to add back in the part that is struck in red on exception 2.
I still move.
John has moved. Do I have a second to that motion? I'll second. Judy has seconded. The motion, the amendment to the motion is to add back in, which poses a safety hazard, dangerous condition, or. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, we have put that back in. We are moving quickly now. We have an amendment. The amendment is to present this to the city council, to send it back to them with the changing of the wording, adding with a primary trunk on definition B, and striking when a tree has multiple branches, that, striking that, and to add back in those words stricken in exception 2, which pose a safety hazard, dangerous condition, or. That is the motion as it stands right now. All those in favor say aye.
Wait, point of clarification.
Oh, yes,
We've got a misprint in this.
where?
F2,
F2,
the second sentence in red. In such cases, the septic system permit shall be submitted to the city. Will a tree removal permit? I believe
Yeah, I
the
wrote
word should be
with.
with.
Yeah, I should correct that. Thank you.
I am not going to do, did you correct that language, please? All right, I,
Aye.
Aye.
those opposed, say nay. By unanimous decision, we are going to resubmit this, I'm sorry it's taken this amount of time, we are nearly at 8 o'clock, we have one more thing on our docket. All right, we are going to send it back to them, we have done our best job. You have here a road thing. If you know where this, there's, if you go out Highway 101, there's, the garage, I guess we would call that a garage there, like a 101. Okay, and if you look on up the street, you can see there's new construction going on back there. Now, when the fire department wants to go out, and put out a fire out there, you're going, well, go to the street across from the 5th Street. Okay, so Garrett brought to us the proposal that is basically the Clatsop County proposal. 7 Clatsop County in there. It has things that need to be adjusted. Garrett, would you like to succinctly give us a rundown on this?
Sure. Okay, so when a new dwelling or multiple dwellings are proposed to be accessed from a private road, and the total number of dwellings is 3 or greater, we're supposed to have a name for that road, and the address is then supposed to be addressed to that private road name, whether it's a private or if the road gets dedicated. In this case, there's a private easement road that is used to access a 4-plex development. It's located around 3702 US Highway 101. The city did not when permitting the fourplex, get this road named. And we're trying to do the right thing now and get the road named and follow basic public safety and emergency service standards. So the city of Gearhart doesn't have an established process in its titles for doing this. And so we have, to start the conversation, presented you with the road naming standards from Clatsop County Title 12, and are suggesting that we roughly follow their road naming process. That process would have you or staff or the property owner propose up to two draft road names. We would then issue a notice to neighbors of the road, giving them 30 days to weigh in on the road name. And then you would have the final decision in a follow-up meeting to decide what the name is based on any feedback you get, and based on the standards that we've copied from Title 12 here. So the input that I'm asking from you is, would you like to propose up to 2 draft road names? Or would you like staff to invite the property owner of the fourplex to propose a name? Or would you like staff to propose a name and follow this procedure? Or would you like us to not do this for now and create our own procedure for the city of Gearhart and then follow it after it's established?
Okay, so Garrett, as I understand it, one, the city of Gearhart does not have a procedure for naming streets at this point, right?
Outside of the subdivision process, no, we haven't found a procedure.
Okay. So the city of Gearhart's lacking something in the procedure.
Is that
Yeah.
just an administrative thing that you could do?
We can say that. We can say, hey, we need to adopt some procedures. We can say, we want to name the street such and such. We can say to the Pink Window people, I thought they should name their street Pink Window Lane. Could be unique. Submit some names.
Currently, the only thing that we have in the zoning ordinance just states that the planning commission is to name the street. That's pretty much all we have.
In subdivision.
In the subdivision.
Okay,
No,
my problem is that I bet we have 7 different opinions of what a street should be.
it's all-
named. And I guess my personal preference, let the builder. I think they
Make that
should,
motion.
I can't do it, I'm president, I have
I'm
to
making a motion that we let the builder.
wait, just a minute, John, yes, John, go
Well,
ahead.
aren't there 2 property owners on that road to be named? Okay, so that,
Yeah,
There's an existing.
so currently there's an
Ask
existing
one,
property owner.
each one to give one name. But I guess we
Then how to
know.
decide?
What?
Then how would they decide?
No, that's the process,
Wait
is
a
the 2
minute,
names.
guys,
Wait.
it does state in our ordinances that the planning commission is to name the road to avoid any kind
Subdivisions.
of complex or anything like that. We don't have a process for just, just regular parcel property constructions, but
Okay,
No, but to clarify, Garrett said that we could promote,
You
we could put 2 names, we could ask the property owners to submit 2 name options.
correct.
And then we can choose. But why don't we ask each property owner to submit one name, and then we'll pick one.
But don't we also have to create a process to do it? It's more than just asking them to, it's more than just naming the road. We have to create the ordinance that allows us to name.
no, we already have the ordinance.
No,
It says, no, the procedure says the planning commission will decide. It doesn't give us these instructions like which way they're running will be lanes or roads or drives or courts or whatever. It doesn't tell us any of that. And what should probably be done is that's one of those little things that maybe need to be just cleaned up and taking care of it, no, Chad, shaking.
There's no process.
There is no
There's
process.
only one sentence
All
in
right.
the subdivision.
Let me,
But there
let me be clear on that.
There could be if you guys added it.
That is only if it's a subdivision.
Right,
If it's not a subdivision,
right,
this particular situation is not a subdivision.
right.
There is zero process.
Not even saying that we're responsible.
Not, yeah,
There's no written process, but I came to you and we had a short discussion about this. And you do have an informal process.
I can tell you what I've done before.
Yeah.
First, I tried to convince them to name it Chad Avenue,
No, Lane, he's going up.
but we had Ashley Lane, that's off of Deerheart Loop, AKA Gun Club. That area had kind of a serial house situation where it was 2 lots, then divided into 3 before they came to us. Then once it was divided into 3, never built. Once we got the 3rd house on there, we needed to name that road because of emergency situation, just like you said. I asked the gentleman, what would you like to name it? He goes, I don't know, I just name it whatever you want. I says, don't you want to name it after your wife? So now we have Ashley Lane. Right? And that's how we came up about that, and I'm like, okay. But I mean, if you go to other communities, you know, they've done things to either go through cultural issues. Or they've named all their streets after trees, and then here's somebody that names their street Bob. Which is not a tree. According to Sid Morgan, so.
Madam Chair,
There is some opportunities for us to, you know, we do have people come to us, they wanna name it, if you'd let the staff do it, we'll continue to do what we're doing, otherwise. We need a procedure.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
there's a state statute that instructs us how to name roads. It's ORS 227.120. It's something that I've worked with, and I had gone through the packet, but I thought we were adopting the county standard. So if there is no standard, we would default, so that's on me, my bad. If there is not that, we would default to the state statute. The real purpose of this is to check in with first responders to make sure there isn't a duplicative name, to make sure that it accurately describes the type of road. In this case, it's a dead end, so I think it would be court. But we can, you know, we can use that. But again, the main goal is just to, when someone calls 911, that the first responders would be able to get there. So I would say if you don't want to adopt your own renaming or naming, we could use that state one.
My recommendation would be that staff write a process that includes at least F and G. And then we have a process, and if it comes to planning commission, that's fine too. But I feel like it's important that the applicants or the people that are building have some say in it before we weigh in on the name.
so,
More importantly, the people who live there, even if they're not the developer.
Well,
okay,
same.
one question, first question. Do we want the city to adopt a procedure?
Yes.
Yes? So could the city rewrite the procedure that would make sense for the city?
You mean write up something and then spin it for the next line question, maybe for you to take a look at?
Yes. Yes?
Yeah.
Sound okay, yes. Secondly, the issue of naming the road, because at this point, the road still needs to be named, they've got building going on there. Do we wanna leave that to the city, do we wanna say, go to the applicant peak windows and get some suggestions? Or let the city take care of naming this road at this time?
Applicant.
applicant or applicant was city.
Or,
I mean, let them
or
tell
even
the applicant.
applicant back to us.
Okay.
with a draft policy.
Okay,
Well, I think it should also be this Murphy residence, because they've been at the longest, so I would
Okay.
communicate with the Murphy residents and the Pink Windows. Developers and maybe get some feedback and that kind of stuff. I think we should just name it after our longstanding chairperson, Virginia Lane.
or Dawn Court.
No, no,
I actually said Chisholm Court. Because the Chisholms were big developers, they developed off Pine Ridge and let's campground.
Well, the problem is we don't, if there's another road with that name or in the county or anything like that, then it has to be checked too. And there may be another one.
So I looked at all the street names up and down the way, Park Lane, Garden Terrace. Garden Terrace Road, which sounds a lot like Garden Terrace to me. Lenore Lane, somebody's wife. Seabridge Lane, Pacific Way, Park Drive. So my suggestions were Mountain View Lane and Foothills Terrace.
Like I said, we would come up with at least 7
If we brainstorm, we
suggestions.
could come up with half a dozen.
Can by consensus, we agree one, the city bring us a procedure, the next meeting that we could look through if it makes sense to us and gives us some guidelines. And 2, to let the applicant in conjunction with the city pick a name for the street pronto as they've got building going on there already.
Somehow though, connecting to Don's point, the other owner of.
The other, those people involved with that work with the staff.
Are you,
Yeah, I think so. I think that in this particular case, I'm not sure that these folks might not be getting along. So what I envision as a procedure moving forward is that the staff will go ahead and collect information from everybody who lives on that street. And then we would bring those names to here, and then the planning commission can
Okay.
choose.
Perfect.
And that's, you know,
Perfect.
and in that way, it's not on me determining if it's a street name. And then also working with the staff, we'll come up with some rules and say it can't be anything beyond 20 characters,
Why not just use this?
you know, yeah, we're gonna look at the RS
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Now that Peter brought that up, so we'll combine what we have here, the ORS, in a way to make neighbors get along a little bit better.
Okay.
And we'll approach you. We will make an attempt to get this road named in the meantime by contacting both owners and seeing if we can come to an agreement.
And then we can make a decision. Can we agree with that by consensus? Yes, yes.
Yeah, the only thing, now what about the road, you know, the old Red Barn development in behind there, we have issues because nobody took ownership of who's gonna repair the road. Is that your job as they develop that, or has it been done, or does it have to be done before we give them a name, or?
We're gonna need to name things through construction, you know, so that they can get deliveries and things like that and start that process, but. Yeah, that name is, that road is named, it is Cutler.
Well, I understand, but the road that we're talking about, Cutler had problems because they did it, somebody wanted to pave it, somebody else didn't want to pave it.
yeah, but that's done through the process of or through when it comes
The
to
subdivision.
partition.
Right, well, was it done when they partitioned?
For easements, there's easements on it.
Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me, it's just it's another problem.
Was it paved or?
Yeah, that might be, I don't know, I'll look into that, you gotta tear that one up.
Is that a
but-
question?
yeah.
Maybe.
Chad, I think that's a really good point, is collect information and then put it on us, so it's not.
You don't need to resolve the neighborhood issues, just bring us.
Yeah.
A neighborhood proposal.
Several, all right.
I got a lot of procedure.
Are there any? We are essentially done this evening. Concerns of the commission? Questions for the land use attorney? No. The meeting is adjourned at 8:13. Part of your clock is cut up, correct? I thank you all.
For sitting through
Thank you.
trees, what's going on?
Aaron, do everything in your power not to have it come back to us again.
Well, I suggested we come
Thank you,
back,
John.
they were done.
Bye.
We've done the best we
I
can.
think the meeting's over. You gotta be careful here.
Yeah, something's good.
Once we stop being.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
Yes.